Hey, everybody. If you're listening to this, you are listening to the first free hour of this episode of The Shift with Doug McKenty. If you like what you're hearing, please consider subscribing to the show in order to access the full feature-length versions of the podcast, as well as have access to the members forum, where we discuss potential topics and interviews and dive deep into the overall concept of The Shift. For only $6 a month, not only do you get the full-length episodes, but also an opportunity to co-create with me, your host, Doug McKenty, the future of the show. Go to www.theshiftnow.com or patreon.com/theshift and sign up today in order to help make the shift possible. Thanks for listening and enjoy the show. Good morning, noon, or night, wherever and whenever you are listening to The Shift. I'm your host. My name is Doug McKenty. This episode was recorded on December 12th, 2021. Today I'm happy to introduce a legend in the scene. Going by the pseudonym Captain Wardrobe, this artist and blogger has been active in exposing the colonizing tactics and social engineering of the predator class for over 2 decades. Though lesser known than some, the tireless efforts of El Capitan behind the scenes have influenced many well-known independent journalists and content creators dedicated to penetrating the matrix of mass propaganda in order to provide a worldview that accurately depicts the mechanizations of the imperial forces lurking behind the curtain of global control. Captain Wardrobe's unique blend of art and logic stands out from the bulk of those reporting from outside the left-right paradigm. His blog includes not only articles clearly delineating the web of corporate and government interests engaging in social engineering of the masses, but decades worth of poetry and music creating a holistic experience that opens the mind to the possibilities of a reality outside the corporate government narrative. He invites the purveyors of his work not only to accept the reality of the world as it is, but to imagine the world that could be, should humanity choose to liberate itself from the colonizing forces currently imposing their grip on the minds of the bulk of humankind. Stay tuned for this conversation that discusses the old days of conspiracy thinking, the function of art as a path forward, and provides a general overview of just how the capitalist class has taken control of much of the information flow that influences the thinking of the vast majority. Captain Wardrobe's unique, if eccentric approach provides a refreshing reprieve from the doom and gloom often associated with conspiracy thinking. His blend of art and humor provide both an informative and uplifting perspective that exposes the dark underbelly of the controlling class, while providing a path forward based on creativity and individual autonomy. His approach seeks to create a worldview that both unifies the masses while concomitantly promoting the diversity created through individual self-expression and authentic creativity. Find out more about the work of Captain Wardrobe at www.declarepeace.org.uk/captain. As always, you can find out more about The Shift, sign up for the newsletter, find hours of free content, or subscribe for feature-length versions of the show at www.theshiftnow.com. If you like what you're hearing, please like, subscribe, and share this interview throughout your social media networks. We rely on listeners like you for distribution of this alternative information. You can also look up The Shift with Doug McKenty on YouTube, Rockfin, Odyssey, and all your favorite podcast distribution sites. Go to Doug McKenty on Facebook or follow @DMcKenty on Twitter to stay up to date on everything produced from Doug McKenty Studios. I want to give a big welcome to today's guest, Captain Wardrobe, and a big thanks to you for helping to make the shift. Hey, everybody, and welcome to this, the 102nd episode of The Shift. I'm your host, Doug McKenty. Today, I am happy to announce that my guest is the El Capitan of conspiracy theory himself, Captain Wardrobe. So I want to welcome him to the show. We've been actually in contact probably for a little bit over a year now, kind of talking behind the scenes, and he has been doing this for a very, very long time. So I'm excited to get a little bit of information about his history and what it's been like. He's actually more active. For those of you who may not know who he is, he's very active behind the scenes with a lot of us content creators, and he's been doing it again for such a long time. And it's always nice to get the wisdom and the knowledge from people that have been out there trying to spread the word for quite a while. So looking forward to this conversation. And El Capitan, I just want to ask, can you give us a little bit of a history about yourself and how you got into doing all this kind of work? Oh, what?
Hi, how's it going?
Doing good.
Well,
Good
they
to
told
talk
me
to
I
you
had to
again.
wear a mask, so
Right.
I just thought I put the best mask I had on. It's really thick, and all the Corona dudes, the banditos, can't get in there and
Yeah,
give
they
me.
can't get through that. That's like better than an N95, I think.
I think it's a lot better. The glass. I'm
Yeah.
out of breath. I'm
Yeah.
out of breath doing that. That's how unfit I am. That's unbelievable. How are you, mate? All right.
Yep, doing good, doing good. Great to have you on the show. I mean, we've been, like I said, we've been talking for some time, and we're always kind of catching up with each other and trying to figure out what the heck is really going on in the world. And just
Trying to
right.
decode the madness, the collective psychosis that is happening right now. You know, LSD in the water.
No doubt, no doubt. They mix it with the fluoride. Well, so
That
we're
was a
finally.
nice intro. Thank you for the intro.
Absolutely. Yeah, we're finally sitting down and doing a more formal interview here. And I'm looking forward to my audience getting to know you better. Yeah, why don't you just start with a little bit of your history then? Because I know you've been doing this for such a long time. And when I interview people who, who have such a long history, I mean, I think you've had your website for at 10, 15 years, maybe 20 years now. Like you really got started early on in the internet. So, yeah, why don't you just explain how long you've been doing it and what it's been like and what it was like 20 years ago. I mean, as many of us still feel isolated, but it must have been crazy in the year 2000.
Oh yes. Can we? Well, it'd be nice to make it go all black and white and shimmer back, wouldn't it?
Right.
But we're going to go back in time, everybody. I started out when the internet. I started getting onto the internet about 1997. And I'm a musician, so what? Some of the stuff I did, I got myself a little computer and I got myself a keyboard and stuff, and I started recording myself. And I've always been recording, but once the computer got involved, it was brilliant, and I started doing multi-tracks. It was brilliant stuff. But then 9/11 happened, and it was really weird because I'd just been to San Diego, and I'd walked around San Diego and seen a massive nuclear submarine base, and thought, what are Twin Towers? And I'm like, And I'm like, so I got back and we were just sitting in front of the telly, me and my ex-wife, Carmen, who's a firefighter, and her knowledge, actually sitting with her, watching this all unfold at 8 o'clock I don't know what time in the morning it was just ridiculous. We were sitting there and she was sort of going, that doesn't look right.
Yeah, right.
And so it was her fault that I was like this. No, it wasn't really. I was always a bit of I always question things. I mean, we can go way back to the first Gulf War. There was a program on Newsnight called The Neocons, and I watched that, and that shit me up. I was really, really scared. I was like, don't let these nutsos in. And what happened? Everybody, yay! It happened.
I know, right?
Yeah, that was one of Jeremy Paxman's last good things I think he did on the BBC, by the way. But because Jeremy Paxman wrote a book, I think he co-authored a book about bioweaponry with somebody, and actually sourced David Kelly, Dr. David Kelly, many years ago, and people like that, Scott Ritter. So anyway, I've just gone way off on a tangent. But anyway, 9/11 happened, and I really set off. I was majorly influenced by people like Alex Jones and David Icke, really. I'd read David Icke's book in 1990 when I was at art school, and I read it alongside a book called Supernature by Lyle Watson, which became quite a cult classic with kind of, your new age and your druggy types,
Mm-hmm.
and it's all about like a Russian kid, age 6, turned a tennis ball inside out with his mind. He rolled it across the floor and it would bounce on the wall, roll back again, and it would be completely inside out. And those sort of stories were all through the book. It's kind of weird and wacky, interesting stuff,
Right.
What's going on? So, and anyway, 9/11 sort of woke me up to the fact that, it just didn't look right from day one. And I've always been, after reading a bit of it, I was like, yeah, okay, here we go. This is it. Strap yourself in, kids. And I started doing this website on like you get the early website hosting places. I had Mad as a Fish and I had Blue Yonder. And it was all between these two, like a tiny little site. And I started building it and rapidly running out of space. And a friend of mine, somebody got in contact with me who became a friend called Prajna Pranab from declarepeace.org. And he's a guy who runs like, he's very, very into self-sufficiency. And he lives in Portugal, but he was living in Portugal running like a kibbutzi kind of thing for his mates. Like self-sufficient, his own electricity, his own power, everything. Brilliant guy. But he basically gave me this web space, right? And I'm still using it. This was in 2001. And Declared Peace, he just went, use it. And I put all my albums up there, all my artwork. The site has built and built and built through it. I don't even know how much space I'm taking up.
Yeah.
So it's quite crazy. I mean, originally I wanted to like fill the internet up. So let's just fill it up.
There's so much information out there and so much that you cover on the website. And just to let people know that it's declarepeace.org.uk. So they can go check it out.
So it'd be /captain as well, I think. So
okay.
Yeah, if you just put the Declare Peace, it goes to Praj's front page. And if you add a captain, it'll go to mine. Then if you add a Murder Inc., it'll go to the Murder Inc. But the main page is the captain. So declarepeace.org.uk/captain. That's the one. So yeah, I started looking into what was going on with 9/11. But as soon as, it wasn't long after 9/11 that, of course, Afghanistan and Iraq, and Afghanistan was kind of brewing anyway, wasn't it? I mean, the first drone strike, I think, was in 1998 in Afghanistan. That was very underreported. But Iraq obviously really set off, and I've got some extensive. Now it's actually proved. I often thought I should take it down, because it's out of date and it's higgledy-piggledy. But it's proved to be a really, really good resource for me to check back on. Because on Murder Incorporated, down with Murder Incorporated, I went into sort of the esoteric side of things as well, examining cults, examining cult control, examining the elites, and doing it in a kind of way which has grown into what I do now, which is like confirmation bias to and for things all the time, and kind of being a bit schizophrenic about it as well. So it's like, it's not like an ergo, if this is true, this is true. It's more like, what if both are true? Or what? Let's see where we can go with this. And it leads me into different avenues and keeps my mind open. That's the way I like to approach it,
Yeah. I definitely suggest people go check it out, because at this point there's just so much information. You've got so many articles up, and it's going back through, years of exploring this alternative subject matter. And I mean, as I was preparing for this interview, actually, I was checking some of your stuff out just about the COVID situation and realizing that, this is what's so phenomenal. Someone like you really has all the information up there, for example, that has just now been released in the RFK book about Dr. Fauci. I mean, you go deep into Fauci's connections with AIDS and AZT and the similarities between the AIDS crisis and the whole COVID thing and the way Fauci's handling COVID. And again, I can only imagine the frustration that you must feel when you're coming up with this stuff. I mean, literally decades before everybody else. And then, like these other people kind of are following in your footsteps. But
it's a strange one, because what's happened is, my Murder Incorporated, I do go off and write and go into tangents and write what I've found. But a lot of it was actually sort of building pages to other people's work. So I was very, very interested in what John Rappaport was doing, what Sherry Tenpenny, because Sherry Tenpenny was about back then, and people like that, and Brandy Thorne I got to know of. And I was also in contact with, there was a really great writer called Cheryl Seal, was doing some stuff. It came to the point where I was posting stuff with Indie Media, and what really started to get my hackles up was, it was really strange. All around the world, 9/11 was questioned in every Indie Media. And I was looking at Italy, I was looking at San Francisco, at New York, Canada, I was looking at India, and Mumbai. They all had indie medias, and they were brilliant. And the British one was the only one that as soon as you put something up about 9/11, they started calling you an anti-Semite.
Right.
And I'm just like, what?
Right.
And so, yeah, it was very strange. And other people were posting, like Cheryl Seal, and immediately getting called a crackpot, a conspiracy nut, and all of those, you know. And it was about the time, actually, that the ADL were really digging into David Icke as well, you know. You know, where they actually set up their own chat rooms with their own race hate in it. You know, they actually set up their own neo-Nazi websites to make it look like, oh, yeah.
Sure.
It's an awful business. It's an awful business. And you just think, well, how can I be? Oh, dear. And I've never agreed with anti-Semitism, but like Semites, you know, if you're a Semite, you're from Arabia. You're an Arab. You're a Jew. It's the area. Very strange. How did I get onto that anyway? But
well, and I mean, that was something that was definitely started many years ago, and it's still coming to a head with everybody who's a conspiracy theorist. They try to label as anti-Semitic, and I mean, I just did an interview with Dr. Cynthia McKinney, and she's been hammered by this because she talks about the dancing Israelis, and it's like, well, the Israelis were dancing there. I mean, we have pictures of them, and we have them in on Israeli TV saying, "Hey, we were there."
Well, they've got all the deposition, the documents where they took them in for questioning.
Right.
You know, there was like, you know, 6 guys, and they got pictures of them. They seem to have disappeared off the web. I don't know if I've got them on the site, but there's a picture of them by the van looking out over to WTC while it's still standing. And I think these photographs taken, you know, days, if not hours before it happened. I mean, these things happen all.
Yeah. Okay.
Okay. Yeah. Cut off. Hello. Who's that?
Yeah.
Anybody out there?
Why don't you let people know where you are, just so, because you are a long way away, and we may have a little connectivity issues.
Yeah, my internet's been fine. So I leech from next door. It's all free. So I'm actually living in. Shh! Don't tell anyone. I'm living in North Cyprus on the Turkish side. Cyprus was divided in 1974 by a civil war that was promulgated by, I would say, controlling forces from the Eisenhower onwards regimes. Eisenhower famously called Cyprus a flea on the elephant's back. And yes, there was a Balkans type. This is a pre-Balkans war, if you like. When people say Balkanization, what they really should say is Cypriotization, because that's what happened here as well. They basically stoked both sides of the racial and ethnic divide in order to create a four-man war. Then they divided the country down the two. Turkish took the top. Funny how they're NATO now, and the South got bases and American influence. So they've got British bases, got massive covers right down to Syria and beyond. It's been there for long 60s, late 60s. So yeah, they managed to take that. So it's geopolitically very strategic as well. It's a little lovely time here in Cyprus, and I wanted to come back because it felt like home. Felt more like home than England ever did. I do like England. I've been around it and toured it, and I love the countryside, and I love it's beautiful. I studied art in Falmouth and Cornwall. Absolutely adore it. But the sea's warmer here, and it's nice.
Yeah. I know the weather is definitely better.
Oh yeah. I was in the pool earlier. It was really cold, but it was it woke me up.
Right.
It's still nice and sunny. Yeah, it's lovely.
Well, why don't we discuss a little bit about your artistic past, because you do post a lot of music and poetry up on the website, and just kind of compare and contrast, I guess, your art with your more journalistic work, and how the two kind of blend together. Because I really appreciate it, actually. I think more artists need to be involved in this work, right? And it's a great, actually, because, and we can get into this later too. I mean, you mentioned the whole cult phenomenon, the cognitive dissonance that a lot of people have when you go against the dominant corporate narrative, and how Logic, which we're all trying to do, is independent media or independent journalism. It just doesn't break through that barrier, but maybe art is a more effective medium, actually, ultimately.
I mean, art for me, I've always been, artistic at school. I was like, I only got 6 O levels. So I'm not that intelligent. I hated exams. I cheated them all really. I had to get like 6 so I could go to the first art college, my one in Luton, so that I could go on and do a degree. And then I just wanted to get as quickly out of Dunstable and Luton as possible. Just because it was one of those hick towns, right? It's like you have them in America, you know, they're kind of backwater.
Right.
Like
Yeah, we do.
Town, right? South Park kids. It's like, you know, so we just want to get out. I love it now, though. I mean, no disrespect anyone from Dunstable Luton. Hello, I think you're lovely. I just you should have seen it in 1980. It was brilliant. So yeah, that was it. Really, I just made this mad plan when I was about sort of 14, 15. I've got to get out and go to art college, and that was it. It was like it's better. It was easier than being an intellectual. And I really, really don't like university people at the time.
Right.
They do really hard work too, and I'm a bit lazy. And actually, it proved to be the making of what I ended up like, because I was never really good at writing. I used to write creatively, but all the spelling's wrong. Half the site's spelled wrong. I'm pretty rubbish at it. But to actually get into, I was really, really intimidated by having to write essays for the degree. And I was like, oh, God. And this guy sat me down and just took me through how it don't be daunted, you know, got to write 1,000-word essay. Don't worry about the amount of words. Pictures alongside it, and then you'll find that the more pictures you use, the more you'll want to write about it. So that kind of, and there's also stuff now and back then, which is that's kind of where I come from and how they merge. Is the meaning of objects and pictures, like say the Greeks, that this is not a pipe. It's a fantastic sort of example of being able to cognitively understand that it isn't a pipe, it's a picture of a pipe, right? So you go through that dimension, you go through that window, the painting is a window, and it's that reality thing. And I think people are really having problems with that basic sort of assumption, right? In these days, I do, with the idea of metaverse and the idea of virtual reality. You know, virtual reality, it's an anathema. That's a contradiction in terms. You either, you know, you've got reality or virtual. It should be just virtual reality. Yeah. So yeah, well, I got into writing very creatively for my essays. One of my essays was it was a 5,000-word essay on what was it about? It was something really shit. It was something like subjectivity, right? It's 5,000-word essay. So what I did was I got a notepad and I just wrote random words 5,000 times and then put a finishing line at the end, a checkered line, and then wrote one letter after it. I got 60% for that.
No, yeah.
I don't know what I was smoking. It ain't good.
It's very creative. Very creative.
That's the sort of thing we used to get up to. It was 90s. It was like I went there at 88 to 91. And, you know, you'd be writing your essay on the beach and smoking a joint and eating and going to raves at night. And I was in bands and stuff and playing at night. And then I lived on a bus for a year as well with John and Jasmine, John Warburton up in he's well away now. He's up north. We used to live on a bus, and we used to there used to be a whole bunch of us called the Brew Crew. And they're all like, you know, not no fixed abode travellers. They got the stripy jumper. They got the dog on a string, right? And they're like, you know, we all sit around a fire. And it was proper. It was really nice. We used to like strip caravans down and weigh them in, make money, and then go buy a crate of special brew. It was brilliant. It was brilliant. Totally illegal. You got in trouble with it. I got in trouble with the cops loads of times. I nearly got chucked out of college. And that was when I nearly got chucked out of Falmouth School of Art. I was like, right, I better get on with this. So I managed to claw myself back into it. Actually had to go and live in a proper house. Windows and the door.
Man.
Yeah, sucks. But that sort of environment as well, the free festivals were great as well, because it wasn't all Glastonbury and paying and loads of money. It was all free. And it was like, you know, you'd meet all these people like Spiral Tribe and they were all playing, and you know, it was the atmosphere back then was akin to the 60s. It was really, really amazing, and you really felt like something was actually happening. Completely new forms of music were being made and bouncing off each other, and old forms were coming back and resurfacing. It was amazingly Well, it was just incredible time to be alive, and I kind of feel a bit sorry for the younger generations. I really do, and I think that's partly what drives me. Is like I really would like them to experience what I've experienced, and it doesn't look like they've got much of a choice. And I kind of want to know why. Really, why haven't they got any choice? Yeah, doesn't look like they have, does it? It's just enforcement of choice that's now taken over. You know, the death of the club scene in Britain really came about with a piece of legislation called the Civil Contingencies Bill. 2004 it was updated, but I think it came in a bit earlier than that. And it was to stop illegal raves, essentially. And I actually met a posse called the Exodus Posse, and I only met them briefly for a couple of days and stayed with them, and they were really nice. I went to one of their raves, I did a bit of graffiti for them, but they told me the story of one of their members, Bixie, who got framed for murder. And it's very interesting the way that this story sort of rolls out, because they frame him for murder. And what it turns out is the town councillor is a Mason, and they had an agreement with Whitbread, a massive brewery in Luton. And what was happening was all these kids were going to these raves, taking ease and that, but they weren't drinking in the pubs. So the manager got,
right.
Oh, what are they going to do? So what they did was they actually conspired to bring down the Exodus Posse. By framing this guy for murder. Channel 4 did a documentary about it. I can't remember what it was called. The guy who was doing that documentary was there while I was there, and it was really interesting to talk to him. So those sort of things are going on, and you sort of think, oh, and it gets even more deeper and darker and horrible and twisted, and you think just for the sake of a few 1,000 kids having a good time, on a farm. Exodus had their own farm. They would have their own animals. They were absolutely wonderful. They'd drive through Luton in a Jeep, like kind of banditos,
right.
Cuba style. And, the Masons and all these high-ups with the funny handshake brigade are all conspiring to stop it all because they want bums on seats. And eventually with that civil contingency bill, which stopped gathering more than 30 people or more than 15 people at any one time, and if you were caught without permission to gather, you could have your equipment taken off you and confiscated. Unbelievable, draconian shit. People are saying, oh, it looks like it might be a police state now. Imagine what we were thinking back then. So it's kind of like, if you put it in perspective, it's been going on for a very long time. And it is about getting bums on seats. It's about consumer society. It's about corporatism. And it is about that kind of, I was going to say, the best form, I am in favour of the best form of censorship. And that is that little red button you've got on your device, which tells you can turn it off.
Yeah, absolutely.
It looks like they don't want you to know about that little button anymore. They want you to keep it on all the time. Eventually, they'll probably take that button away, but they're not allowed to at the moment. You see what I mean?
It is like you're saying, like they're building this virtual world that we're all going to live inside of and that they control the creation of. I mean, that's, these stories that you're describing to me remind me of the fact that the art scene has really been taken away from the common man. It's so difficult to make it. Anyone that is trying to make it as an artist, as an independent artist, it's a lot like being an independent media content creator, isn't it?
Yeah. Well, you've done it as well. You're a music producer, with similar backgrounds, really. You produce music and you've done other things as well, haven't you? So it's really hard. Sort of like, one of the challenges, people ask me, why is it all free? Why is your work all free? Right? And this is a great story, right? I was outside Reading Festival, right? And we bought a load of beers, crates of beers, because we thought we could get them in. We got to the door, and it turns out you couldn't take your own alcohol in. We're like, oh, what? So we're sitting on these beers, and we're drinking them as quickly as we can. But we can't. So I'm trying to give them away to people. Do you want a beer? And they're walking past, and these are festival guys going, no, thanks. No, because if it's free, there's something wrong with it. So I started charging for them. They don't come and buy them.
Right.
What's wrong with this idea of freedom? Consumerism has brainwashed people into the idea that it's worthless if it doesn't cost money. It has to be tagged with a label. It has to have that price tag on it because that gives it value, apparently. And that's your classic patronising, like a patron telling you won't be legitimised unless you price what you do. And so I find it more of a challenge to try and give things away for free and exist in the free Totally free. I've got one album for sale, but poor old John Rowe, he hadn't sold many. What I had. Try and exist for free. It's much more of a challenge, isn't it? Because I don't have, I haven't got like 50,000 quid to bung into PR for it, or everything. People have to realise that everything they see that they think is legitimate has got PR behind it, and it's all got this a big industry backing to it.
Right.
And the reason why they think they like it is because they're being told they do. So what's more legitimate, me giving it away free, or you being told you like something because of the flashing things on the screen that tell you that it's legitimate, and because it's had a BAFTA, and because it's won a music award, or because this?
Yeah, I mean, as with art, everything's been so corporatized, and then you can't get those distribution outlets. So no matter how good your work is, unless you've kind of, maybe literally made a deal with the devil, you're not going to. That's
how it felt. It really did, Doug. Yeah. I mean, I've got another story as well. I was making the early stuff for like 1998, and I'd already done a lot. I went really prolific, and I just really got hooked into making music on the computer. And I got a phone call from an old mate, and he was working for Channel 5, Trevor. And he was doing PR, and he was doing like storming sessions, trying to find people to work for a thing called Scrap Hit Challenge, and they needed some music for it. And Trevor knew I did techno and that, and I did industrial techno too. And so he asked me, he rang me up and goes, "Would you be interested in doing the titles and the incidentals for Scrap Hit Challenge?" I thought, well, that's a bit of a break, isn't it? And I said, "Sure. What's the money?" And he went, "You're not going to get paid. What you'll get is points. And this is the system, the way it is, right? You do a little bit of work, you get points, and that gives you access to studio time."
Huh.
I'm like, what? So what? I just, no.
Yeah, right.
Points, I got my rent paid.
Right.
Yeah, crazy, right? And so you get that, and you can imagine it. I did those incidentals. They give me some points that are absolutely useless. How do I get more points? I'd have to keep working with them. But I bet you, old Sky owned Channel 5, let every person that does their sounds for all their programs just lets them go after one series and gets the next one in.
Yeah.
Because it's a conveyor belt of convenient, cheap labour. That's how artists are treated.
Right. I actually just did an interview with this author, Donald Jeffries, who wrote a book about Hollywood. And one of the things he was talking about, it's basically, even because he was just astounded at how many people, even who maybe make it onto a TV show, maybe make some kind of decent money for a 2, 3, 4 year run and have some fame and notoriety. People know who they are, and then they just get canned, because I think the next, like you're talking about, the next cheap labor is right behind them. They never work again. And how many people that we think are, even people who are, we think are rich and famous, actually end up broken, homeless.
Absolutely. In fact, I mean, there was a friend of my missus, Debbie Smith, who was a guitarist with a band called Echo Belly. Do you remember Echo Belly? Fantastic band.
Yeah.
When I met her, she was at a lovely party and that. I got to know her, and she was a bit, pop starry, really pop starry actually. But the next, about 3 years later, we used to go up to Edinburgh Festival to watch the comedy and look at theatre and just get generally very, very drunk. And but we saw Debbie, and she was DJing. She was doing this like really late night slot, and we talked to her, and she asked us, "Can you buy us a drink?" And I'm like, "Well, I mean, got any money?" And she goes, "Well, no, they've got me like holed up in this like 1-bedroom in like hotel, and they're paying me like £90 a week."
Wow. Right.
She was on the front
giving
cover
her points.
of NME 3-4 years before that. She was on the front cover of NME and Melody Maker and things. And she had to do that to fulfill her contract.
Right.
That was a 5-album deal, and she had to do that. That's where they put her. I'm like, God, I'm so glad that I didn't take the mountain of cocaine and join in with that set, because I nearly did. I nearly got signed, and I actually changed my mind. I just said, no, I don't want to do it. I think I'll be dead by the time.
Right.
I've got quite an addictive personality. I'm not a shy boy. I have got a very addictive personality, and I think sometimes it's good to just have a little sit back and discover yourself in a quiet and methodical way. We don't have all the answers.
Yeah. Yeah, I had a friend that it was similar. She actually started as a backup singer for a band in Austin, and then they got signed. They were kind of an opening act. She ended up dating the guy, I think, from the band called The Darkness back in the '90s,
Oh,
and then
Justin.
yeah, and then of
I
course
thought
it
he was
just didn't go anywhere.
like a Justin.
But
Oh wow, what a total spinal tap of a band. I love them. I
and
do. I really love them because they're so Queen. He should have been the next singer after Freddie for
right.
Queen. Mate. So flamboyant. So flamboyant.
But
Miss
even
that. We
still,
need a bit of flamboyance. Satanic, really, don't we? We need a bit of flamboyance in the music industry that isn't just like a load of satanic imagery after the devil. It's just like, what? Took over.
well, it's gotten so crazy. And again, these corporations have moved in, just like with everything else. It is the same with art, and they suck people up. They chew them up, they spit them out, and it's just like this grinding wheel of artists that remain underappreciated, never really make it unless you're one of the chosen few. Perhaps
Absolutely.
again for reasons that we don't really even want to know about what what they get into, and then those people are allowed to be super famous, and other than that, it's such a tough gig. And it's really it's indicative of the entire corporate system. I mean, this is just the thing. I mean, like, art is just um it's a great way to kind of segue into the bigger conspiracy that we're dealing with, this corporate system that has alienated everything. Sometimes I think a lot about how it's almost like it is corruption, what I continuously call the corporate government system, where these entities are like working hand in hand to build this. And we've talked about this before, but this whole system of colonization, this world dominating economic system, it's alienating all the people, all the masses of the people, that it just gets, they suck people in, and these people are actually, they have to build their own prisons. I mean, art, truly liberating art, is never going to be allowed to be distributed through the corporate system.
I'm a massive fan. Yeah, I'm a massive fan of outsider art. I mean, there is a wonderful documentary by Jarvis Cocker about outsider art, and it is on YouTube. I would recommend it to anybody watching. It's really great because it goes to What Power and places like that. And these guys were just obsessed with what they were doing. A lot of them are very religious, which is very strange as well. So they're just like completely obsessed. They lock themselves away and they cover their walls in just mad outsider art sculpture, and it becomes a shrine to their own lives. And I suppose, in a way, my website is like that. It's like a shrine to my own little kind of strange place that I want to grow, my little web garden, my little allotment that I want to grow, and it's for me. I'm never really worried about sort of. I actually put a thing on to find out how many people are looking on it, and then I took it off again because it got really depressing. But everybody needs that little place. I think everybody. It doesn't matter if you don't think you're creative. I tell you what, if you don't think you're creative, you very probably are, and if you think you're creative, you're very probably pretentious.
Right.
Pretentious, moi.
No, never. So yeah, I mean, let's kind of dive a little bit deeper into this, because again, the almost subtle, not so subtle difference, but almost subtle difference between art and propaganda, because propaganda has become just ubiquitous, and the a lot of times it's the production value that just fools people, and then the distribution, because it's all over the place, makes people think that it's valuable art or valuable news.
And very similar to the Word of God, isn't it? It's like as soon as you put the Bible into print, it becomes more authoritarian, doesn't it? It becomes like, oh, well, this means it is real because the Gutenberg invented the printing press.
Exactly.
More genuine. Wouldn't it seem more genuine to you if it was actually handwritten? I really believe because that's what it used to be. It was these beautiful scribed books. I'd love to see something like it. In fact, the musician of ethnography over in Istanbul is an absolute. Anybody going to Istanbul, go and visit it. It's fantastic. It's got actually one of the first written depictions of Allah's name. It's beautiful. Allah.
I just, when I was talking with Dr. McKinney, actually, we used, I don't know if you're familiar with the book Pedagogy of the Oppressed by Paulo Freire, but
No.
we were talking about because he talks a lot about the propaganda. He's actually a very left-wing communist writer, but he was complaining about the fact that the communists were starting to use propaganda, exactly what we're talking about, the same way that capitalist systems use propaganda. And he was saying, like, look, I mean, this is not going to lead towards liberation for the people. You have to engage in this dialogue with people, and education needs to be a part of this dialogue. And that's exactly, it even kind of harkens back to what you're talking about. Once they write it down, it becomes the word of God. And once you got the news system set up with the production value, or once you've got the big stage, then people believe it must be true because it looks so flashy, because it's been written down, set in stone. And then you lose this whole aspect of actually having a dialogue with other human beings, because the dialogue it looks like what we're doing right now,
Yeah. Nice.
It doesn't have, it's not so flashy, even though it's way deeper and it has a respect for the authenticity of the other individual that you're interacting with, instead of imposing your belief from above, from on the top of the hierarchy,
Yeah, top of the mountain, yeah.
Right.
Yeah, the broadcast, the idea of broadcast, casting, like catching fish or casting a spell, broad,
Sure.
mass media, appeal broad. It's all there. It's about mass mind control. Really,
Even
down
the
to
word,
the levels of record companies, and sort of like, if you look at, I was looking at Travis, the rapper, of this latest Astro World thing, and
yeah,
sweet kid, really, and everybody, all the Christians, all went on him, satanic, and I sort of looked at, I watched a couple of interviews with him, and Astro World's about his psyche. It's about him being confused in this music business because it's all got a bit out of control for him. I think he wants to remake Astro World from 12 Flags. It's Six Flags. I forget where it is, but he basically wants to make a kind of theme park in his brain to deal with the psychological pressure of the music industry, which is really interesting, right? And then they put him on stage and make it all look really, really weird, satanic. That whole going into the mouth, that is about a theme park. That is what you're going into his psychology of how he's dealing with the fact that he really wishes he was a kid back on those rides.
Yeah. Well, and this goes back to the whole authenticity question. Like, every artist really wants to, I think, present their art in an authentic way, from the heart to the people. To try to spread, typically, a message of liberation. This is why people are attracted to being artists, right? But then the message gets co-opted, and in order to be successful, you have to participate in this corporate system. And then you've got, you're not going to get the distribution unless you do what they tell you. And then they're the ones that are building the sets and twisting your message. So even when definitely.
I mean, for me, my deep dive on that was the one that goes into RCA and BMG and Sony, and RCA's history of being radar, really, post-war Manhattan Project and radar systems. And if you look at the idea of broadcasting and you look at the idea of mass media, that's what it is, really. So it's not too hard to see the link from the idea of radar and broadcasting, because they come from the same companies. They all invested in it. And then back at the turn of the century, as radio was starting to get big, it turned into television. Yeah, these things from all these major companies. This Serco is part of RCA. Do you know that?
Huh. All right.
Serco now is like this massive total behemoth of a company. It's just huge. It does everything.
Yeah, it's so wild how few people. I mean, they talk about, there's can't be some grand conspiracy, and then when you start to look at the corporations and the people on the board of directors, and you go, except it is. They're all working together, and they're all producing. They're working in concert to to produce this kind of propaganda on the masses. And then, like, I mean, it gets to be mind blowing when you start to realize, like you're talking about, like way back in the radio days and the early television days, where they call it television programming. They're learning consciously. These people who are on the board of directors, the upper class, they're consciously learning how to literally brainwash and hypnotize the mass of the public with this propaganda machine that's just gigantic and now worldwide.
Yeah. There's a lot of neuro-linguistic programming going on. There's a lot of post-hypnotic script going on. I mean, behind the news, just look at the news. I mean, it's been like it for years. I used to look, not at the newsreader, but the animations going on behind them.
Yeah.
They're just constantly moving. This is a hypnotic script going on here. This is like saying, look, and you will see the Wizard of Oz is programmed.
Absolutely.
Read off the auto cue, and you're just looking at the it's psychedelia. It's psychedelia, but used in a very, very political way, you know? So all of those are connected.
And then when you approach people with something that tries to break through, information that's different from this information that they've essentially been propagandized with through all this hypnotic technology, they literally cannot, like the cognitive dissonance kicks in. They can't even acknowledge that a different perspective, that a more authentic perspective could possibly exist. And now we're seeing, I mean, in the last couple of years with COVID, where they're just controlling the narrative completely, censoring other people, calling it disinformation or hate speech. Like we started the conversation with, being targeted as anti-Semitic. Like, what? What? What are you talking about? And yet so many people out there automatically link anything outside of the corporate narrative with, domestic terrorism or anti-Semitism or any of this stuff. And that all has just been programmed inside of their minds to make them literally incapable of being able to accept independent information from people that are just authentically seeking to find the truth for themselves, right?
From a good place as well sometimes.
Yeah.
Sometimes, I mean, you've got kind of, the world's a bit like a circus. It's a bit like a festival. And you have your carnies and you have your people selling snake oil and you have, you roll up, come and have a look at the latest mystery. This is the mystery machine, UFOs and, and other dimensions and stuff. And it's all valid because what I like to do is take everything and it is all legitimate if it exists. It doesn't matter whether it's true or not. If it's legitimately taking me on a journey somewhere, I'll use my confirmation bias or the other way and swing and go, well, that doesn't feel right. There might be a reason for that. And use them to jump around, and then it's amazing what you can come up with. It's like I've strung together some really weird connections of completely synchronous events that happened to me. I've just read them and then made a piece out of them. It might look absolutely batshit loco to some people,
right?
If you come to a conclusion out of it and draw conclusions that actually help you understand what's going on in the world, then I think it's a fair way to go. There's no bad and there's no good in terms of research and how you do it, is there?
Yeah.
Some people
it's your own path.
Yeah. I like to be, I mean, some people are quite professional and sort of write proper pieces and stuff. Like I've just been talking to Ian Davis, and Ian Davis has been doing some marvellous work recently about the global public-private partnership. There's an excellent, I will recommend the Whitney Webb podcast with Corey Morningstar and Ian Davis, where Ian Davis just gives one of the best presentations I think I've ever seen. It is very, very good. And Ian was saying to me, I'm going to check out some of your website, but I'm really, really busy, but can you appraise it for me? And I was like, ooh, that's going to take me a year. I'm going to have to go through it all, because I've been meaning to go through them so that it's easier to see what things are what in the thing. But I like doing silly titles, so you can't possibly know what it is. And then you jump into it, and then you actually scroll down, and hopefully there's a narrative in there as well that I'm kind of seeding. But it's something that you can make up your own mind about, and decide what it's about as well. So it's a bit more subjective, my way of looking at things. It's post-normal critique. We're not living in normal times. There are all sorts of weaponized narratives being employed by psyops people and behavioral scientists and neuroscientists now. And we've got some really, James Gordiano, the Army ethics, I think it's naval actually, isn't he? Naval research ethics about future technologies. Very interesting guy. He's talking about ethics and then talking about putting chips in people and sort of and growing neurological things from birth. And for surveillance purposes, really. I mean, this is what
Yeah.
we've got. We've got a surveillance society growing out of surveillance societies that are exponentially kind of completely out of control. Its Pandora's box is well and truly open as far as genomics is concerned and stuff like that, and neurological research. It seems to be a gold rush. It seems to be that something's triggered this, and I think it was the 2008 crisis. I think the economic crisis sent the money boys sprawling a little bit, and they were about to have another one in 2020. And I think they just went, right, well, we've got to do something here because we want to keep in control. We want the power. We want to keep this power. So what we're going to do is we're going to dress it up in lovely language, sustainable language, and we're going to PR the hell out of it. And old Klaus Schwab from the Club of Rome, I mean, it goes back so many years, and it's all computer modelling. The entire climate change debate was started by a computer model invented by MIT scientists. The Club of Rome's Limit to Growth was built around the modelling of that supercomputer that they built in MIT. And that all comes from the Manhattan Project. All these people come from the Manhattan Project. There's a Chinese scientist that was involved with the Manhattan Project that has become the father of social credit scores and smart cities. And we've got on the other side, we've got another guy who went on to form NASA Jet Propulsion Labs that is dealing with quantum computing and all sorts of things. And 5G, where the precursor of 5G was developed at the Jet Propulsion Labs, which was obviously about your Voyager going to Jupiter and the communications set up for that. We're talking millimeter radar going into communications and satellites. Mm-hmm. So we're talking about sending probes off and being able to talk to them. So that is the precursor of what 5G has become from 4, 3, 4, and 5G. So all of this is based in the military and military planning, Marshall Plan, Manhattan Project. It's all based in these massive, what they were called mega projects. And it's funny, I got a lot of this information from Dominic Cummings' blog. Dominic Cummings is the communications director for the Conservative Party at the time of Brexit and became Boris Johnson's sort of right-hand man and then fell out with it famously. And is now doing some very, very dodgy, naughty stuff, I think, trying to get Boris out.
Uh-oh.
I think he's behind it. But Dominic Cummings' blog talks about K.J. Singh. I can't remember his name properly. I'll have to look it up, but it's on my blog. Being the father of systems analysis. All these people are into models and modelling and creating this technotopia. That what the technocracy that we know and we see now in places like Singapore and Sweden and Estonia, especially, I would say, keep an eye out for Estonia because that's going to go fully digital. That's going to go cashless pretty soon, and Sweden will probably follow. Singapore looks to be going, and Malaysia looks to be going. They're the technocratic capitals. There's no coincidence that the WEF were going to hold their meeting in Singapore. It's a massive shining light to what they're going to be bringing in the fourth industrial revolution, and are gradually doing it as expected. It's just rolling in while everybody's panicking about a virus that kills 99.8 of the that doesn't kill 99.8 of the population. This strange virus, this microbe, this invader, alien, programming all the way from Mars attacks, from way back the old idea of alien invaders.
Right, Orson Welles.
Almost as if they have genetically propagandized us to believe and be scared of such things. So we've got fear of immigrants, fear of terrorists, fear of microbes, it's all been programmed in through mass media and political programming. Yeah. I mean, no accident that Tony Blair got into power on the back of foot and mouth and more disease scares. They correlate exactly with his election successes. It's just unbelievable. It scares the shit out of the public, kills a shitload of animals, 6 million cattle. You even got the army involved. It's play for play what's going on now. But obviously, this is on a grander scale, and what could be called the next step up from a mega project, which is a terror project, and it's global. And this is what Prince Charles said in his recent speech after COP26. He wants to militarize the response to climate change.
Right.
How do you do that? Well, you're going to bomb microbes. You're going to bomb the sun. What?
One of the things. Yeah, one of the things that was in RFK's book, kind of in his conclusion about the real Dr. Fauci, was that the whole coronavirus thing, actually, the whole warp speed thing to push the vaccine out was actually like 75% military operation, completely militarized. And I want, this is something that Like I had a conversation last month with Alana Freeland, and I don't think like people have this notion that science is creating the new technology, and I want to get into this with you too about it's basically a cult religion, this idea that science is kind of driving progress and the human race is moving forward because the science is determined that this is the best way forward, and we're sort of evolving towards this, basically transhumanist utopia. But the fact of the matter is that all of our technologies now, and people really don't get it. It's not like altruistic people are in their garages doing experiments, like back in the day with a Tesla, with a Nikola Tesla or something. It's like literally all of the technology comes out of the military industrial complex. I mean, the mRNA vaccines come right out of the military industrial complex. All of this 5G, all of this technology, it's not like it's a natural evolutionary process. It's like there's a handful of people who are at the top of this military hierarchy who are literally controlling I think it's hard to believe for a lot of people, but they are literally controlling the direction that humanity and civilization are going in, and they have unlimited funds.
Yeah, control evolution. But it comes from a very strange place. It's been going on for eons. I mean, like a classic quote from John Dee, who was advisor to Queen Elizabeth I. Is science is a higher form of magic, right? And that's what we get, you see. So there's been a lot of us have believed that the military-industrial complex is 50 years ahead of anything that they release and tell us that is new. So you kind of got in 1997, I believe it was reported in Jane's Avionics about the first X-45, I think it was an X-45B bomber, flew up. It's an autonomous drone. It released the payload and hit its target. And it only released the payload because it was told to, but it did it on its own. That's in 1997.
Yeah.
Right. Okay. And you had the GCAS program, which was basically going to get them to fly in swarms in formation. They canned the GCAS program, and actually all the money went into the space plane, the new X-46 or whatever it was. I can't remember. Forgive me if the numbers aren't right. I'm not that. I'm not that. But yeah, that was the space reconnaissance plane. It was highly secret for many years, and then suddenly came sort of like reporting. But yeah, those kind of we don't get to see what they're doing. We don't get. There's no accountability. Right. There's no democracy.
I mean, it's actually. It's interesting to think about because, we just had this conversation about art, but actually science is equally as co-opted. I mean, it's not like, the average, the curious scientist, and there are many, and they have theories that are outside of the mainstream narrative, and they all get called quacks and crazy, mad scientists and everything, people that are interested in free energy.
People like that. Yeah, cold fusion technology ideas. Have now been taken on. They're really going for it. They've got it to actually produce, many times it's like the power of the sun for about 10 seconds, I think it is now.
Wow.
And you just go, that took a lot of energy. Like whole of China just goes dark for about a second.
Right.
It's just, it takes so much energy to make it something that's supposed to not take so much energy. There's a whole kind of myriad of problems with what they're doing and the way their reasoning works. And it's very scientism based. It's very kind of like it doesn't make sense. So, like if you look at how a nuclear power reactor works, right? It just basically you get all this nuclear power. It heats up water. It produces steam, and it makes turbines go around.
It boils water. I know.
Boils water. It's just a really posh kettle.
Yeah.
And we're all going to be glow in the dark if we're not careful in Finland.
Right.
They're going to bring them in. That's the next stage is the kind of climate deal that's going to merge with COVID. This COVID thing is about, we've got this, like National Socialism had a hygiene element to it, didn't it? It was kind of like, we have to be, and a green element as well with National Socialism.
Yeah.
Very often not recognised that there was, that Hitler was into his green stuff, and he was a vegetarian, and he was, and he wanted to save the planet kind of thing, but it would save the country more. We've got to be strong and fit, But this is what's going on a global level now. We're making people paranoid about their health all the time, right? And then rewarding them with burgers.
I know, right?
On the phone, if you behave yourself, you get a burger voucher. You go for a run, and your Fitbit tells you, okay, you're entitled to go fucking eat our shit.
Right.
Die.
For your health.
George Carlin would have an absolute field day with this one.
Yeah, he would.
Oh man, miss him.
Right.
George Carlin, they'd just be all over this, wouldn't they? So we've got this global hygiene coming in, haven't we? It's just, but it's going to be the health of the planet and the health of us. It's all going to come in linked. So we've got this, all the languages there.
I mean, that's what's actually so crazy, are the many, many, many parallels between the Third Reich and what's happening now that people are just ignoring. Even the terms that they used in the Third Reich, it's for your safety. Even the concerns about overwhelming the hospitals. This was part of their eugenics program. Well, we've got to take all these sickly people away because we can't have the hospitals getting overcrowded, and it's like they're using the same playbook, and it's like, my God, people, can you wake up? And they can't. They're so hypnotized into believing what the authority figure tells them. It's like the Milgram experiment, where people would shock people, and the guy in the white lab coat would be like, "Oh, turn up the dial," and you can hear the person screaming.
Yeah. That scene where the guy just looks around and goes, "Really?"
Right.
Just does it anyway. So
and it's like,
but he did it anyway.
Yeah. Take another vaccine. Take another
anyway.
booster. Take another booster. It'll all be good. The guy in the white lab coat is telling you. Dr. Fauci is telling you. And so,
I'm quite surprised in America and Canada. I mean, I think it was Michael Moore that did what was the one he did about health, going over the border to Canada to get cheap pills and cheap pharmaceuticals. Sicko. I'm not a fan of Michael Moore. I think he if you'd have seen his early stuff, it was Video Nation on BBC Two. That was when he was good. He really did some good stuff. But Fahrenheit 9/11 is a travesty, and so is everything else he's done. It just becomes raving lunatic. But America is used to having a privatised healthcare. But in Britain, we've had the destruction of the NHS for the last 30 years, and it has just gone from bad to worse. And you can see the corporatisation coming in. So the difference is like over there, they've always had this kind of like, you got to pay for it, and it's like, in Britain, it's even more insipidly like, how are these people not seeing what's going on? We've got to save the NHS. It's fucked. How can we save? It's on its dying legs, mate.
Right.
It's crazy. It's really bad what's happened, and it is the destruction of it. You've got new laws coming. I mean, they've just passed it over, and they're bringing in more in the last couple of days. Now you've got nurses being told to go home because they haven't had a vaccination, and then they're worried about staffing. And you think, hey, what?
And they know the vaccines don't stop transmission. So it's like, why? What difference does it make if you're vaccinated? I mean, theoretically, for a few months, you can limit your, the amount of disease that you're going to get. You might stay out of the hospital for a few months until the vaccine wanes, and then you need a booster. That's what it does, and that's what everybody knows that, and yet they can still. This goes to show you how powerful the hypnosis is and the brainwashing is, that people still think that everybody's got to get a vaccine. And, it makes sense to mandate the vaccinations, even when it's not going to stop the transmission. So why does anybody care? Why does anybody think this? They cling to it. I mean, it's unreal what these guys can do. They literally have the power to create this mass hypnosis, and most people will fall for it because of the flashy, blinky lights in the background and the production values.
Yeah. I mean, I started looking into this with avian flu about 2003, 2004, and SARS outbreak. Avian flu is a classic case of mass media control. It was this to a T. Everything happens now as happened back then. And I got into looking into people like were the first genetic companies like Genomed that were talking about the management of disease openly. The management of disease. So what you could see was that what they wanted was the human body is going to have its dashboard, and it's going to be managed all the time. And back then they were talking about it, and it raised alarms in me. And I started. It's actually written on my old site about what's happening now, about everybody being continually boosted and upgraded. And that idea of upgrading human health and keeping it at a level obviously comes from Bill Gates and his operating systems. And the moment when Windows 9 and into 10 that started just doing automatic updates without being asked, I knew that a line was crossed, and I could see that might happen with health as well. And I think it's done. The frog is boiled, my friend.
Yeah.
We've got to find a way to say no. And it's not hard to say no. It's like that little button on the front of everything. You can switch it off.
Yeah, right.
All we've got to do is switch it off.
And you just got to wish, I mean, these systems seem overwhelming. The corporate system, the government system, they have 100% funding, but we are the 99%. I mean, that's for real. And if we all just switched it off, then the world could change tomorrow. And that's why I think the mind control is so important to these guys. They have to keep the majority of people essentially hypnotized into believing the garbage that they're getting fed, which is only for the benefit of really the 0.1%. I always go to the 0.1 because even the 1%, like, but the one, if you look at the graphs, the 0.1% own most of what the 90% of what the 1%. And I think if you even went to the 0.01%, then you're going to find that they own most of that. So it's like
it's Vanguard and BlackRock. It's like, I was absolutely a great video came out from a Dutch lady. Did you see that one about Vanguard and BlackRock?
Yeah, it's mind blowing. It just shows you that like these people control the entire system. And again, it's mind-blowing that you bring it up. People think you're a conspiracy theorist, like you're some kind of crazy person. It's like you're living in a gaslighting world because you're like, here's the information, and they're going to figure out any way to squirm out of looking at what you're obviously looking at. Like it's just right there.
I can't socialize here. I go out and they tell me not to talk about it.
Right. Well,
I've even shut down. As long as you don't talk about that though, and I just go, well, I can't be bothered. If I'm not free to talk about what I want to do, and I wouldn't be a pain in the arse about it. I mean, people who know me from Whitney Bay who might be watching this will probably know, yeah, he is a bit of a pain in the arse. He got chucked out of all the pubs because he wouldn't shut up. No, I won't shut up. I won't. All right, no, I want to save the world. We're all going to save the world. We can do it. We really can. But we can do it in a way that technology isn't the problem. It's the misuse of it. And it's the control of evolution is what is going on. They are steering us into a false utopia. And it's like this idea that there is another possibility. I mean, after reading, like I say, I read Supernature by Lyle Watson. I could definitely recommend it. It's wonderful. But we may have untapped abilities that no one is aware of. And this avenue of where they're taking society seems to nullify those abilities and create their own versions of it. And so they can own it. So let's say telepathy.
Right.
What we're doing right now, we're talking to each other over a distance, aren't we? Right? That's telepathy. So, imagine if you could just do that by thinking. This is what they want to do. They want to replace our natural abilities, our second sight. We have a second sight. Animals can feel when an earthquake's coming.
Right.
They sense. They're built to sense it. It's part of their fight and flight mechanism, and we have it too. We have all these innate abilities that we're still not sure of. Telekinesis. We don't know what we're capable of. And what they're going to do is they're going to throw away all that possibility so they can replace it. So, Elon Musk's brain chip is basically telepathy to a cloud. And if we lived another 1,000 years without all that, we might have it naturally.
Right.
It might just be like,
I mean, this. Not. This is I kind of had a breakthrough with my Tai Chi practice a few years ago when I realized that like the philosophy behind Tai Chi or any of these internal medicine systems, the Hindu system, the yoga system, is that you have this energy called chi, or prana that you can cultivate. And then lo and behold, and people who cultivate these things have these abilities that you're talking about. And it just sounds like crazy talk to the vast majority of people who've been raised inside this corporatist system, this colonial system. But then I have this phone right here that can operate on Wi-Fi. And it's like, well, can my body have Wi-Fi too? Like, if the phone can do it, why wouldn't my body have it? And then lo and behold, that's like exactly what these guys have been talking about for thousands of years. Like, yeah, you have a Wi-Fi system inside, and it's this, the Wi-Fi energy, instead of being 5G, it's organic, and they call it chi, they call it prana. Yeah.
Oh, wow, gee.
Yeah, come on.
I like it.
It's exactly what you're talking. I mean, it's, we've all heard many of us have heard the whole problem reaction solution concept, where these guys cause the problem and then we have the reaction, and then they're able to kind of funnel us into their solution. And this is exactly it. They have oppressed and alienated our emotional energetic systems, so that we can't have access to these potential abilities, and at least our own authentic emotional perspectives, which they've caused through a trauma bonding, basically, through the education systems and the operant behavioral conditioning and all of this stuff that we all go through growing up is basically a trauma bond. And it cuts us off from that organic part of ourselves. And then lo and behold, the solution is their mechanistic universe that they can, exactly as you're saying, have total control over. It's crazy. I mean, where they're just going to plug us all into the Borg.
Oh yeah, the Matrix. I mean, the announcement that the war on COVID is a world war footing is one of the most insipid things, since obviously George Bush said you're either with us or you're a terrorist, and it's a world war.
Right.
I mean, this is divisive. It's on a par with, they're obviously mentally ill. The people that they've got in as puppets. I mean, they're just spokespeople for the people who really want the end game. They do think it's a game. I'm not sure whether they're playing a finite game or an infinite game. Now, the infinite game is a game without horizons. You've got a board and you've got so many moves you can make on a board because of rules. And to make the game infinite, you just open it up, but you still got those rules. But it never ends. So the idea of making another move enables a quantum of possibility into any move you can make. But with a finite game, it has a proper end point, and someone wins, and someone loses.
Yeah.
Now, for me, I think they're more polemically going for an infinite game, but dressing it as a finite game by giving everyone a side. So we've got like left and right, we've got paradigms, and they've got a fight. That's the game. They're the rules. These are the rules they give you. You be a conservative, you be a Christian, you this label yourselves. And we should be living in a world which wants to define itself. You call yourself what you want. Live how you want. Mind your own business. It's brilliant. Everybody's free. Fantastic. What is happening? The exact opposite. Label yourselves. Be proud that you put your label on you and wear your little yellow star. Call yourself trans. Call yourself whatever. But as long as we know what it's called and we're going to dictate.
Yeah.
I'm not against any sexuality. I'm not against anything. Do you know why? Because it's all brilliant.
Right.
It's all brilliant, isn't it? We don't even know there might be sexualities out there we've never even heard of. Like, I don't know. Some of them probably, I don't know, it might be, won't they?
Right. We can imagine.
I'm sure it's on Pornhub anyway,
If you are listening to this, you are listening to the first free hour of The Shift with Doug McKenty. For access to the full feature-length versions of the podcast, go to www.theshiftnow.com and subscribe for the audio version for just $6 a month. Access the full-length episodes in video form through rockfin.com by subscribing at the Shift with Doug McKenty landing page. For $9.99 a month, you gain access not only to The Shift, but also all other premium content material hosted on the platform. Find out more at www.theshiftnow.com/store. Detoxify your body, decolonize your mind, make the shift. Let's end on this concept about colonization, because so many people have learned this history where 100 200 years ago there was colonization and the European nations went around and colonized, and then And then, thank God there were people like Gandhi who liberated India, and, people like Nelson Mandela who ended the colonization of
Uh-huh.
Africa. And now we all just live in this post-colonization world where, every government is sort of autonomous and has its own integrity, and we work together through the beautiful and wonderful United Nations, and nobody sees that, first of all, these corporations, the transnational corporations, were always the colonizers 200,
Yeah.
300 years ago. And now they're still colonizing. And then, but we've even got more. We've got the central banks, and we've got the IMF and the World Bank, and all the financial is all part of this colonizing system. And now we've got, we've got pharma colonization where they're going into Africa and India and experimenting on people and forcing them to take their drug. It's so amazing. I think, to me, this whole patriarchal system of colonization, this whole cult that we're talking about, this whole like world government that is being imposed, through now the Great Reset and the Fourth Industrial Revolution, is just the continuation of this process of colonization that never really stopped. And these wealthy people that are on the top of the hierarchy, these are just the families that have been, making big bucks off the backs of colonization for hundreds of years now. It's just the same old. And in one sense, like, it's almost like I've actually had this experience where it's like, oh my God, the Great Reset is coming. And then I'm like, I kind of take a step back and I go, well, actually, this is just another tiny step in a long process that they've been going on for so long that we don't even realize, that we've just been participating in this forever.
They're just changing. They're changing the bars on the windows, and they're replacing the locks on the doors. That's all they're doing. And they're just, on those, the bars on the windows are all going to be shiny and lovely and beautiful, and the locks on the doors are going to be the metaverse. And it's going to be, it's all just glass, and it's the same prison. It's just a rebranding exercise, isn't it? The Fourth Industrial Revolution is a rebranding exercise with Star Trek on top of it.
Yeah, right.
It's like the sci-fi utopian nonsense. It is absolutely, and it's bad. It's so badly done. It's like a B movie. It's just like, when you watch like somebody's put a lot of effort in, but the graphics aren't quite right.
Right.
Got something to compare it to, and you go, oh, this is what's going on. It's just shoddy. It's shoddy. It's poorly done. And it's really badly thought through. It's just awful.
This reminds me of the Dr. Frankenstein metaphor, which I think is just so perfectly apt for this. Like, they're trying to move us into this transhumanist utopia. It's exactly like the crazy Dr. Frankenstein thinking that he can recreate life. And he's going to create this, in his mind, while he's building the Frankenstein monster, he's going to build this superhuman, transhuman, wonderful utopian being that can transcend death and live forever and have super strength or whatever. But man, when the monster comes out of the box, it just doesn't look quite right, does it? It just doesn't look quite right.
That's what happens when you sort of, like, if you take some editing equipment and you put Metropolis with the island of Dr. Moreau and Frankenstein, you edit it together really well, and it looks exactly like now.
Exactly like this, right?
Wow, great editing. You can't see the joins.
Yeah.
It's horrible. You've got to laugh, haven't you?
I know. Sometimes I
want to end it.
Yeah, I was going to say I get criticized for laughing. People are like, "You're talking about such horrible things. Why are you laughing?" And I'm always like, God, what's the other option, right? Like, laughing is a
best medicine, isn't it? I've got a joke. Then I've got a joke, and I'll finish on a joke.
Sounds good.
Now, this is about a dear friend of ours. Alison McDowell, right? She, I went on a site, and she's got this incredible map. It's the biggest map she's ever made. It's huge. It's got millions of people on it, and I had a look at it. And it's basically a map of everybody she's blocked in the last 24 hours.
Right. Do we have to go there?
Alison, it's only a joke, all right? Don't get all prissy and get the ump. It's just a joke. Your work is brilliant. Carry on. I think it's
Alison
great.
Alison does great work.
Yeah, she does. She does indeed.
All right. Well, thanks for coming on, Captain Wardrobe. Really appreciate the work that you've done. Well, the conversation, of course, is excellent, but the work that you've done over a long period of time has made a difference. I hope more people check out your website, check out your personal work, and really just to know that you've been out there working behind the scenes. I mean, you reached out to me, you've contacted a lot of other content creators, and you're kind of a like this behind the scenes operative that's there for a lot of us
I'm the
to
bass
talk
player,
to.
man.
Yeah.
I'm the bass. I like playing I'm in the background. You know,
That's a perfect way to put it, and I appreciate it though. I appreciate it because the bass player is one of the most important members of the band and one of the least appreciated. So
I really appreciate it, Doug. Thanks for having us on. And a message to everybody out there: don't give up. It's just say no. Use the off button as much as you can. Dump the smartphone. Technology isn't bad. I've got a laptop. I use it to make music. If you go on my site, you'll see all my music's all free, and you can just listen to it, chill out. There's loads of lovely ambient stuff. I recommend that to just like take a break. One of the biggest things is get with nature, go for a walk, sneak out. And if you have to be an outlaw, it's not a crime to be an outlaw, especially if the laws are a crime.
There you go. You want to give people the website? Give people the website again so they know where to go.
Yeah, it's declarepeace.org.uk/captain.
Okay.
Yeah, man. You stick a link on the thing if you can, mate. But,
I will.
That'd be great. Thanks very much. I mean,
absolutely.
I don't really go for. I don't get paid to do it. I don't do any pay any sort of platforms. It's all free. I do it all handwritten code. You probably see that it's a bit badly spelt in places. I do suffer a little bit from that. But I try and put some stuff out there, and it's all there just to make me think. You know, it's not gospel, and I'm welcome for people to challenge anything that I do.
Yeah.
On their videos, if they want to reply or they want to talk about this, what we've done, it's absolutely great. And I'm also available to have a good chat with anybody who's out there and a debate, because I don't think there's enough debate on. I don't think there's people arguing different points of view.
Sure.
It's good to be different and have arguments.
You
get stagnant otherwise, and you just end up in an echo chamber. We can't have this echo chambering because that is the weaponization of opposition.
Yeah.
So we need to start sort of thinking about actually being creative with the idea of debate and not be afraid to be wrong and not be afraid to be right. You know, there is no truth. It's just a constant road, and it's horizontal, and it goes forever. It doesn't end. You know, we've got to keep going, and we know what's wrong and what's right. We should have a decent moral compass, and don't let the bastards grind you down.
There you go. I hear you. That's it.
Stay with it.
Yeah. All right, and I do encourage people to check out the site. It does have a lot of information on it, but also, again, the artistic part of it, the music and the poetry that I think, and that's what really makes you unique from a lot of people, is that you're combining a lot of different mediums to get this message out. And the message, what you just said, have a decent moral compass, have respect for other people's points of view, and have a good time while you're walking your path into that horizon. So
well, I mean, that's why I think we connected first. I mean, I've always enjoyed our conversations, but we're sometimes different, and it's always amazing to talk with. I mean, before this, let's just tell you, we had it was 4 hours, wasn't it, last week? And
I think so.
Flew by, and it was wonderful.
Yeah, definitely.
I mean, if you want to, I'd love it if we could make this kind of regular, because I don't have anybody to talk to here. It's bloody rubbish. I'll go mad if I don't talk to someone.
Well, you can always feel free to get in touch with me, and let's just wrap it up. I got to let people know that you've been listening to The Shift. I've been your host, Doug McKenty, and you can find my stuff at www.theshiftnow.com. If you sign up for the newsletter, I'll keep you updated with all the new content that I'm coming out with. You can find me, Doug McKenty, on Facebook. I know it's not the best place to go. I always say this, but it is where I have the most following. So, and at D McKenty on Twitter, Rockfin, Odyssey, the YouTube. I don't know if this one's going to go up on YouTube. I'm having to be selective about the ones that I post on YouTube, of course, because they're quick to take them down if I talk to somebody as open-minded as Captain Wardrobe here. So, and
who knows, Doug? I mean,
right?
We'll see. It'd be interesting to see if it stays up, mate.
And so, yeah, you can check out my stuff. And all those different outlets, and the podcast, of course, is up on pretty much all your favorite podcast hosting sites. So thanks for you all for listening, and thank you, El Capitan, for coming on the show. Really appreciate it.
Mucho gracias, mon amigo. Take care, dude. All right, man.
Adios.
All right, speak soon.
Okay. All right, everybody. That was my conversation with Captain Wardrobe. Been wanting to have him on the show for a while. We've actually been kind of speaking behind the scenes for probably at least a year now. We touch base every 6 weeks or so. Just to see how each other are doing, and we have conversations, kind of big picture conversations about what's going on within the whole scene. And I've always appreciated his advice, so I was happy to finally get him on the show. Um, one of the things about having these conversations with people that have been producing content like this for such a long time is that they have a really big picture concept of what's going on in the world, what's been going on in the world, and all of the sort of shifts and the nooks and crannies within the whole scene that have happened over a long period of time. A lot of times, I find myself having conversations with him about the different personalities that are in this whole quote unquote conspiracy theory movement, if you will. I want to replace that term entirely, and I actually prefer the term populist movement, because I think that what they call conspiracy theory now is the same as populist history, or basically the lineage goes back to the populist movement of the 1870s, 1880s. But I keep saying conspiracy theory because it's the only thing I think everybody will understand. But I like having these conversations with Captain Wardrobe about what's going on in the scene and the movement and the different personalities, because he's kind of one of those characters that's been in contact with these people, many different personalities, for a long, long time now. And even though his work may not be as popular as some, he really has been in contact with a lot of these bigger names, and talking to them behind the scenes, giving them advice, just kind of clarifying concepts and messaging and things like that. So he's a pretty important personality, actually, that maybe many of you haven't been exposed to. So I urge you to go check out his work at the website. The other thing is that I really like his approach in terms of the use of art, and not a lot of people really do this. In terms of really recognizing that, I think that the shift that we want to make in the world is an artistic and creative shift. We're trying to get away from the sophistry of patriarchy, right? And start to really recognize that culture can be founded on art. I've spoken a little bit before about how I think patriarchal cultures are founded on war. That's what we see all the time, all over the place, right? Continuous states of war, essentially. And a big part of making the shift into a better reality is focusing on being creative. Instead of having mythologies that are based on warfare and fighting, the hero king notion, then we have more of the artist character, more of the trickster, right? And I think maybe a trickster is a great word to use to describe the work of Captain Wardrobe. And if you check out his site, you'll find decades of his poetry and music up there. And he really does a great job of blending art with the more logical side, in terms of his reporting and his blog writing that goes into more detail about the various different topics of the corporate government collusion that occurs throughout the world, in terms especially of the social engineering that many of us are concerned about. So again, urge you to check out his work. The other thing about it that I like having his conversation with is I'm always trying to create this big tent. Again, maybe the term populist is the word to use for just anyone that believes in decentralizing power. And I'm always trying to get away from the left-right paradigm. And I think Captain Wardrobe actually comes from a more of a leftist perspective, whereas I started on my journey from a libertarian point of view. And we all come with our own confirmation biases into this kind of research. So when I can find somebody from that opposite perspective, and we can really overcome those initial biases that we all have, and we can find this huge amount of common ground that I have done with him, learning through listening to him how to describe my own perspective in a way that he can appreciate, and then he giving me his perspective in a way that I can appreciate. It helps us both, I think, to again create a messaging that helps to build a pretty big tent in terms of just attracting as many people as possible into a movement that seeks to decentralize corporate and government power and give that power back to local communities, and preserving individual autonomy and allowing for individual creative expression. And so he is definitely on the forefront of promoting all of those concepts. So I was really happy to finally get him back on the show, especially after having spoken to him so many times again behind the scenes. So I hope you guys appreciated our conversation. I'd like to have him back on sometime in the future, and we'll keep this going. Again, being able to have these conversations from these different perspectives, bringing in that artist aspect, that personality, and a little more humor and levity, as you saw at the beginning of our interview, of course. I think really helps to spread the message, and that's what we've been doing. We've been working on the messaging, and again, trying to create a big tent to raise awareness about being careful, about listening to the corporate government propaganda, which is the vast majority of the messaging that we hear, figuring out a messaging that appeals to the mass of the population, that just presents this notion that we need to see these power structures for what they are, and we need to work towards a civilization that decentralizes power into local communities once again. So thanks to Captain Wardrobe for coming on the show. Really love the conversation. And I'll let you all know that his website, once again, is www.declarepeace.org.uk/captain. And if you check out that site, you'll see the first thing you'll see is flashing lights and all kinds of different avenues where you can go and explore a really a huge volume of work that he's accumulated over the last 20 plus years. So I hope you appreciate it as much as I do. And if you're interested, you can also find out more about The Shift at www.theshiftnow.com. You can sign up for the newsletter, subscribe for the full-length versions of each episode, and find hundreds of hours of free content actually up there now. I've got, I think, over 250 episodes of a variety of different programs. So www.theshiftnow, you can check it out. You can also find me on Rockfin, Odyssey, YouTube, where I'm not posting everything anymore, but most of my stuff is still up there. I'm on Facebook, Doug McKenty on Facebook, and at DMcKenty on Twitter. So you can get in touch with me at all of those variety of different places. All right, thanks everybody for checking this one out. My next episode is going to be with Renette Senum. She is running for the governor of California on a more of a populist political ticket. So that'll be a really interesting conversation. We're going to talk about creating this big tent, actually, and getting beyond the left-right paradigm with political messaging. That's the root of her campaign. So stay tuned for that one. That'll be coming out in about a week and a half. All right, everybody have a happy new year. Hope you had a happy holidays, and we'll talk to you again soon. Take care.